truly St. Mark has made the liturgy beautiful from the moment Mass starts till the very end.
What I discovered at St. Mark's was how incredibly beautiful the liturgy is here. I often say, I came because of the authority that Christ gave his church. I stay because of the liturgy.
The goal of our liturgy here at St. Mark, first and foremost, is to be faithful to God Almighty in terms of his worship. The goal that I have as pastor is to essentially reclaim the liturgy as it was intended by the Second Vatican Council. I want to read just very briefly from Cardinal Ratzinger, then Cardinal Ratzinger, Pope Benedict, in a book that he wrote called The Spirit of the Liturgy. He says, worship gives us a share in heaven's mode of existence. That's so beautiful. He said, in the world of God, there is perfection, right? Order is of God. Chaos is not of God. Chaos is very easy, right? And so he says, a life without the anticipation of the heavenly liturgy is a life no longer opened up to heaven. So the goal here at St. Mark is to be authentically worshiping of God and authentically faithful to Vatican II. Ad orientem, I think, is a very important aspect of the liturgy because it has to do, as I said at the beginning, with our actual orientation towards God.
When we worship that way, we're orienting ourselves toward Christ, toward his second coming, toward the reality of that our worship is of him.
If I am facing the same direction as the people, which I am in ad orientem worship, then I am, number one, I'm leading people towards God, right? I'm acting in persona Christi, which is in the person of Christ. And Christ's dialogue is with the Father. And so ad orientem is one of the many ways at St. Mark where we're trying to have the actions of the body, of our gestures and so on, fit the words of the Mass.
Father did such a beautiful job of really educating us on what ad orientem is, why we do it, what's the meaning behind it. You know, knowing that we're all looking in the same direction, we're all looking towards Christ.
What it's like for me personally to celebrate Mass ad orientem is profound. My personal emotion, if you will, and sense when I'm celebrating the Mass ad orientem is it's much more prayerful. It is much more a dialogue, as I just said, between Jesus and the Father that I'm participating in as the priest celebrant.
I can't imagine going to Mass and not having it ad orientem. And for me to say that, everyone will tell you I was the one who fought it the most, but it's beautiful, and I'm really happy that we have that.
And I thought I'd add, it adds to me a little bit more reverence to the Mass.
I think if you're looking at what that signifies when we're looking at toward the crucifix, that's, I think, the most meaningful way for us to worship.
We are incorporating more Latin because the Church instructs us to. Again, Father Bierbaum is not making anything up, even though some people might feel that. The words of the Second Vatican Council, by way of the Constitution on the Liturgy, Sacrosanctum Concilium, say very clearly, and I'm paraphrasing, I might miss a word here or there, but it says the people, the congregation, is to be instructed and shown how to pray or chant the words of the Mass in Latin that apply to them. And so here at St. Mark, again, I'm trying to be 100% faithful to Vatican II, not pre-Vatican II. That's a very common comment I'll get as people say, oh, Father, you're going backwards. You're going pre-Vatican II. No, I'm not. I'm going exactly to the Second Vatican Council.
So the Mass and the mystery of the Mass is just reinforced by the use of Latin. And yes, it's been hard, of course. But again, it goes back to educating.
I'm still learning, obviously, also. and I'm still trying to get a better understanding and a better grasp. For me, it's a little bit, it's more of a process. I have a bigger learning curve, if you will, but at the same time, I think by looking at the big picture, I think it's also necessary. It's also very traditional. It's really from the basis of Catholicism and how it's taught originally. So I think that's also important.
Adjusting to Latin hasn't been very easy because I'm not a linguist, if you will. The first week we did it, I didn't have the missal in front of me. I was serving as an acolyte, and all I could do was listen. And it really was like being transported into heaven. I mean that. It was so rich and so meaningful. It was one of those inspired moments.
The role of music in Mass is extremely important. So when we look at music in the Mass, we have to look at its purpose. So the purpose of music in the Mass is, one, I would say, to elevate the sense of the sacred.
So when I studied sacred music in school, you learn basically that the Catholic sacred music is the foundation of all of Western music. You learn that chant and polyphony are kind of the starting points of everything. And I actually went to a Protestant undergrad, and I was so proud being the only Catholic in the class. I'm like, this is our heritage. You know, we would go through the order of the Mass, and we'd study it, and all this gorgeous music was set for the Mass. And I really never put two and two together that this wasn't the music I was hearing at Mass. When I started working as music director at St. Mark 7 years ago, I started gradually learning much, much more about what happened, especially regarding music, of course, because that's my interest, and realizing that after the Second Vatican Council, and especially around the 70s, that so much of this music just started to shift to this kind of folky form that I didn't realize was more of a cultural shift than a true change in the church.
Music first helps us to pray best, right? St. Augustine said, he who sings prays twice. So then we say, okay, well, what music? What's proper to the liturgy? Well, what's proper to the liturgy, again, if you look at Sacrosanctum Concilium from the Second Vatican Council, we see that they don't talk about folk music, they don't talk about show tunes, they talk specifically about Gregorian chant and polyphony and other music that has those characteristics to it.
In 2018, I attended this Sacred Music Symposium, and I'll never forget what the teachers said to me. They said, music at Mass should be the soundtrack for the Eucharistic miracle. And I thought that's kind of the mission, the motive statement that I needed.
To me, as I said earlier, it all centers on the Eucharist, and to me, sacred music helps drive that attention, right, to what worship is truly all about. And I've often said, even when I was an evangelical, try to tell people that worship is never about us, it's always about God. Whatever happens to us is a byproduct.
A Mass ad orientem with Latin, with sacred music, then you truly know that Jesus is present in the Eucharist.